What is the truth in the stories we are told? We've been given a story of a world fueled by separation. We've become separate from one another, separate from the earth, ultimately separate from the true nature of ourselves. It's time we learn the truth. It's time you rewrite your story. It's time to realign with who it is that you really are. This is the fifth dimension.
You are infinite and eternal. We are infinite and eternal.
Our natural essence, we could say, is simply being.
We have this awakening coming together as a perfect storm.
We're ready for this. We have the capacity inside. We just got to find that.
All right, and we are on the air. And for today's podcast, I'm joined by best-selling novelist and YouTuber Bjorn Andreas Bull-Hansen. Bjorn, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. That was very nice of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been loving the content that you've been putting out lately, and it's really been resonating for me. I mean, could you start just by giving anyone who's listening or watching and maybe unfamiliar with your work, sort of a background on what you do, the work that you've done, and what sort of your focus is right now?
Yeah, sure. I'm a novelist. I'm 48 years old now. So I've been a novelist for many years. I've written 20 novels. And I am now working on a series of historical novels set to the Viking Age. But I'm also a YouTuber. So I haven't been a YouTuber for that long, but I enjoy creating these little videos and putting them out there on my channels. And lately we have been entering a very, a crazy in stage of world development, or I don't know what to say. But yeah. So I've been talking about that, which is funny because I started out as doing bushcraft and Viking themed videos, which I am going to continue doing. But I felt that I couldn't keep my mouth shut about the whole thing going on. So yeah. Family man. I have 2 kids, 2 dogs, house and garden and all that.
I was gonna say I saw your dogs on Instagram, and they're beautiful greyhounds. I believe.
Well, they are actually Spanish greyhounds. It's they're called galgos.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're both rescue dogs, actually.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, they're beautiful. I saw them when I went on your Instagram the other day, and I was like, oh, they're so cute. But I definitely resonate in terms of what you were talking about in terms of doing YouTube. My podcast actually kind of started out just about talking about mindfulness and learning how to grow and become a better person. And it's sort of evolved into this speaking out about current events and global issues. And it's very interesting how sort of our work and who we are, it really it just continually evolves, and our platforms turn into, because what's happening in the world, I think, is very urgent in a sense. And, your platform reaches a lot of people. I have my listeners, and I think the more people we can just sort of send out our message to, and you come from a unique perspective, a unique background. And I think that's why your message is so powerful, because people see you, they see you're authentic, and, they really resonate with what you're saying. In terms of what's going on in the world, I mean, I don't have a deep background in Norse mythology personally, or the Viking Age, but do you feel there's any sort of myths or lessons and what people can learn from studying that period, and how they can apply it to the modern day? And, I myself look at, in terms of literary examples, I look at Joseph Campbell and The Hero's Journey, and I think people sort of need to embark on this own sort of personal quest, just as sort of an example of what I'm gearing at. But what are your sort of thoughts on what people need to do and what they can sort of learn, and what sort of themes you even bring out in your books, like in your novels, that people can really take from?
Yeah, well, you know, Norse mythology, or more correctly, the Norse heathen belief system is, filled with these very powerful lessons, life lessons. And for instance, you have Håvamål, which is Odin's advice to the human race, So, and that's really what it is. And if we look to Norse mythology, if we can, let's just for the sake of the argument, just say Norse mythology, so that we don't get into the whole discussion there. But point is, it's filled with wisdom and good advice, sensible advice, logic, reason, and there are also this idea that you should be, for instance, independent, you should be self-sufficient, you should be skeptical, critical, and you should be a thinking man or woman, first and foremost. You shouldn't just accept anything, because you shouldn't just accept everything that people tell you just because they tell you. So, and all of this we can apply, and we should apply to the situation today.
Definitely. And I think a lot of people, that is not happening, right? There's not people questioning what's going on. We're being told specifically, and, here in the United States, we have people like Anthony Fauci not to question the whole coronavirus. And it's very much sort of become a cult, if you will, because it feels like I really resonated with you put out a video the other day, or it was a week or two ago, about how it's very much a new religion in a sense, because it's all ideological beliefs, and there is no questioning, there's no reason, there's no looking at it from a wide lens, a very broad lens. And I feel like people sort of have a choice right now of what sort of path they can take. They can begin to question, they begin to look at everything, or they can sort of just go along with what's going on. I mean, in terms of self-resilience, do you think the time we're moving into, where does this leave people who are self-reliant, who do want to question things, who do want to sort of create their own life instead of just sort of blindly follow a narrative that is not based in facts or based in real life, authentic life,
Yeah, well, I think we are going to see at least one parallel society. We're seeing that already, actually, developing now, with maybe even its own separate economy. It's not very difficult to imagine such a thing, and it has happened before, up through history, So I think we're going to see that. Now, it's not going to be dominant. There's one more thing here that people seem to forget, which will be a driving force behind such a parallel society and a parallel economy. The tax rates, they will increase a lot. And now when the politicians talk about the tax, I'm just getting into this because I'm going to talk about it. I don't care that people say, well, don't you earn a lot of money on your novels? You shouldn't complain. I don't care, because this will be applied to most people.
Right.
And it's this age-old trap, right? When the politicians say, we're going to tax the rich, and everyone are looking at people they believe are rich, and, well, they're going to be taxed, not me.
Right.
Doesn't work that way.
Right.
Most
Right.
people will be taxed a lot more. And I'm getting into the topic. Well, I'm sidetracking a little bit here, but people who don't have who are not paid by someone else, no, paid by, who don't get a salary, people who don't get a salary, independent people like, well, like for instance, creators on social media, like you, like me,
Right.
you get to a certain point where you think, well, I'm already taxed 50%. Why should I do more work now? Because they will just tax me 60%, 70%. Why? I don't. So it's very, very, it's going to be very damaging when it comes to the growth of small businesses, starting up new businesses and all of that. But people are generally not so concerned about the taxes because they just think it's going to be this rich guy, not me. So yeah.
Right. They look at like the Jeff Bezos of Amazon
Oh,
or
yeah.
the Bill Gates, and it's like, yeah, they have tons of money, but these taxes that they're proposing, that's not who it's going to affect. They're still going to have
Oh, no.
billions of dollars. Like, and I don't think people, and maybe it's by design that we've been trained to think like this, but we don't think about these sort of long-term consequences, and how it is going to only really leave the big corporations. It's going to sort of destroy small businesses, destroy creators. And and we've seen that with even the pandemic, for example,
Yeah.
shutting down all of the businesses, leaving open the Walmarts and the Amazons. And, I think it was in the United States, 40% of small businesses that closed never reopened. So it's
40%.
yeah,
Wow.
40%. And it's unbelievable. And you have certain states and governors that want to keep locking down and and so it definitely feels like an assault on this sort of small business and independent living. And I feel like we're sort of creating a dependent population, I guess you could say. That's sort of what it feels like to me, dependent on the need for government and authority and all of the society they want to create. You don't have people who can sort of independently live and be self-reliant, you could say. And it's crazy because I think this also plays into, I see you as somebody very in touch with nature, very connected to nature and the outdoors. Do you have thoughts on what it's going to look like in terms of this future way of life? Are we being completely I would say, put out of alignment with nature? Are we losing touch with nature? Is that sort of a big, I guess you could say, plan or part of the sort of agenda, and like just losing our touch with nature? And is maybe the fact that we're not in touch with nature as a society right now part of the reason that this is so able to come into fruition and able to happen?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think if you look at Norway, people are more out into nature, hiking and so on now than they were before. And we were always a people who like to go for walks in the woods.
Right.
But there is this thing with the Great Reset. We are allowed to say the Great Reset on YouTube now, so that's nice.
Beautiful.
Where they have this vision where people are going to move into mega cities and all that. So it's important to understand. I think that's a vision. It's not like it's going to happen, but certainly there are people out there, powerful people, who want this to happen. From a business perspective, it's not difficult to imagine why. It's going to drive consumerism, and you'll have a population that will consume more. That's not what they're selling. They're selling, environmentalism, but it's going to be the opposite. I believe. So I honestly don't know. I think yes and no. And there will be people who will move out of the cities, out to the urban areas, because they just can't. They are thinking now that if we get another lockdown, I just can't handle that, so I need to get out. But I think those are, like a very small percentage. That's my guess.
Right. No, I think in the United States in particular, there are, if the statistics show, there are some people moving out of the cities, like the sort of people with families, they're moving out of the cities and they're moving to like suburbs or more rural areas. And, I think there's a certain percentage of the population that is sort of fleeing, because if, when you lock down and you live in the city, like what are you able to do? You're surrounded by buildings. There's nothing to do. And I'm in South Dakota in the United States, and there's plenty of nature around. So, I go outside, plenty of hiking trails. People here don't wear masks. It's very much life is normal. Like there's not sort of, I feel like in the city you very much get trapped in the sort of government uh narrative, the ways of authority listening, and you're all crammed in together. And it's interesting because I've read, when you talk about sort of the mega cities and things, I think about George Orwell, 1984. When I read that, that sort of that vision that's in place in there, and they talk about the cities and then what it's sort of structured like, feels very reminiscent of that's almost sort of uh, like that wasn't supposed to be a nonfiction book, I guess, or a guidebook, a how-to book. So it's interesting how I feel like that vision is very much coming to fruition. But something I've noticed as well is I'm trying to I talk about the problems like maybe 5 to 10% of the time, but then also talk about some of the solutions, because I think, we can talk about the Great Reset, we can talk about all of these things that are happening, but if we don't have I guess a way to replace them or a way to counteract them with giving people solutions, it's like, well, what are we going to create as an alternative? I guess you could say, right? Um, what are your thoughts on like what an individual can do, who doesn't want to take part in something like the Great Reset or this sort of societal shift that we're seeing take
Yeah.
place?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. My partner, well, I don't like that word. Don't get me wrong. She's not my wife, but
Yeah.
if you say partner that's in Norway, that's a same-sex
Oh, okay.
thing in
Yeah.
Norway. That word. So it's not that, but we're not married. But anyway.
Okay. I was going to say, people use it interchangeably in the United States. So
yeah, I know. This just sounds a bit odd. Nothing wrong about that, but it sounds a bit odd in my head. But yeah, no, we were talking about this the other day, and we pretty much just said almost at the same time, we won't be part of this anymore. It's enough. So that means I'm going to say something that will shock some people in Norway when they hear this. We're not going to wear masks in the stores anymore. It didn't bother me, to be honest, but now we need to show everyone that we're not part of this, because then more people will see that and they will think, well, I won't be part of this either. It's not about the mask. I don't care. I'm one of those people. I can put on a mask. I don't care. But now we need to, as I said, we need this symbolic thing here. So we won't be part of that unless it's a small store and they can get some kind of problem if the customers don't wear a mask, of course. Of course, then I can wear a mask. No, that's not the big issue. So this has gone far too long. It's just out. We have left logic, sense, reason behind a long time ago. And I'm saying this as someone who is not on board with the conspiracy theorists, because they are there. They are out there. I'm not part of that thing at all.
Right.
Some of them, they do reach out and they want me to come speak sometimes, and I don't like that, because it's like I don't believe in those things that they are saying. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that this is the line in the sand. We need to say stop now. We don't have a lot of time now. And those people out there who think that this is going in the right direction, they need to do something now, today. Simple things, but you need to start behaving like you used to, and of course it's also this: be sensible. If there is some, you have an old relative and they are dead scared about the COVID and they think they're going to die if you're 10 meters away without a mask, just be sensible. You don't have to fight that fight every time, but we need to, on an individual level, show that we do not respect all these things that the politicians are saying, and that we have a mind of our own. That's what we need to do now.
Right. No, I definitely agree. And it's been nice for me, because I actually moved out of one state to go to another one because of the level of, in terms of the state I'm in now, we don't need to wear masks. We don't, there's no restrictions in terms of the businesses and occupy, you can have as many people in a business as you want, as opposed to where I was living before. Couldn't get into a store without a mask. It was a big fight. Everybody around me was very afraid. And it's been very nice to sort of have that change of scenery. But I look back and it's like, well, could I have done more at the time when I was living there? Could I have walked into the store without a mask? And I think we're getting to the point where people do need to just sort of be willing to, because be willing to get courageous, find inner strength, be willing to stand up for what's right, even if every single person around you doesn't want to do it, because it's one of those things. I think there's a lot of people, and I wonder if you feel the same way about this. I feel like there's a lot of people who see what's going on, don't like the direction we're going in, but then sort of want to let somebody else solve the problem, or they don't want to solve the problem themselves, or they don't feel like they can make a difference. And it's, I don't think that's the case. I think we need every single individual.
We do. And I'm saying we need to do this now, because in the Northern Hemisphere, the next wave of maybe they will call it COVID-21. Well, anyway, the next wave with lockdowns, that will come this fall. I'm almost completely certain about that. And then we'll be in lockdowns again. And the angle will be that, well, we haven't had enough people to get the jib jab, as we say on YouTube. It's their fault. It's their fault, and all that. So, and never mind the thing with the when it gets warmer. I remember last summer it got better, and then it got colder, and we got this thing back, whatever thing, and. No, we don't talk about that anymore. No. So we need people to speak out and to act normal. That's the only thing we need to do. We need to act normal and sensible. And we have this summer. I think if we go into a new lockdown now this fall, and people still being compliant, that's the final nail in the coffin for a free society, I think.
Right. I tend to agree. And I think you hit on a big point too, is they're going to blame the people who don't go and get the jib, little shot. They're going to, and I feel like there's a very much a divide and conquer type of mentality, because we have numbers. There's a very small amount of people who are sort of imposing this agenda, this direction, the way that we're moving. And the amount of people, who are having conversations like we're having today, like that's a large number. There's probably there's more people who are actually aware of what's going on than people who are um, imposing the agenda. And then you have the whole sect of the population that just is not aware. But if you gave them the right information, if they blasted on the news, pandemic over, take off all your masks, everybody would take it off. Like everybody sort of just goes and listens to what they're told by the news or the authorities or what they see on Facebook. So it's just a matter of getting the information out there, getting people aware and getting people to,
Yeah. Yeah, and this is so simple. This is like, I've never come across anything more obvious and simple than this.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've been interested in how societies develop for all my life. And sometimes you get into this, do you call it a paradigm shift?
Yeah.
This is one of those, and it's so simple. This whole thing we're seeing now, it's so obvious and simple. And I'm saying that as well. I'm not a complete idiot. I do have university education. I have noticed that lots of the people who are speaking out about this, they also have a higher degree education in a relevant field. And the guy the professor, he's an expert on blood. I know how to speak here on YouTube. So the blood thing,
Yeah,
that happened with AstraZeneca GBD jab.
Yeah, you got the whole lingo down. You know the exact words to say.
Yeah, well, he's Norwegian. I think he was the first one who found the connection between that GBD jab and the blood thing. And then mainstream media here in Norway, I don't know if you heard about this, mainstream media here in Norway managed to dig up some dirt on him. They found out that he had been doing lectures and courses for Pfizer and Bayer, medical big pharma companies, right?
Right.
So the angle was that, well, he's in the pocket, he's on the payroll for the competitors. Of course, he would say there's a connection. Now, in big pharma, when you have someone who's an expert, like he's maybe the best, or one of, like, I don't know, 5 people in the world, top guy on that particular field, those people will be used as, they will be invited by big pharma to talk and to hold. It's natural. I don't think it's always a good thing, but making a connection like that, well, he did courses for them, and he made a lot of money, and so he's not to be trusted. That's the angle. I was so disappointed by that, because it was so obvious that these journalists, they know this is completely normal, and they still went out there as if they were paid to have a certain narrative, and they went out there and tried to bury that guy, so that's just one example,
Right. Well, that's what they do, and it's interesting because you mentioned it's like they paid to have a certain narrative. That is what they did, like, are paid for. They're paid to slander and silence any sort of opposition, and you don't hear about the jibby jab. It's been sort of in the United States, the Johnson and Johnson. They halted it because of blood clotting, and they said it was only 6 cases, but if you look on the actual, there's a government website where you can report injuries and report deaths. There was hundreds of people reporting that same issue, so it's obvious there was some serious issues with the actual shot. And, they're trying to make it say like, oh, don't worry, you're all going to be fine. You can still line up for it. You're not going to have any issues. And so it's, the big pharma is very much in the pockets of the journalists, of, the mainstream news. And they're going to put out as much propaganda as they can. And, I come from a history background. Like I studied history, studied how to, to be a teacher. And so I recognize propaganda. Like I learned about propaganda. It's like,
Exactly.
this is blatant. Like you couldn't even do any better than this. And so it's just, I think you're right. The people who are recognizing this, I think what I've found the most common trait is they know how to ask questions. They know how to ask the right questions. They don't take everything they see at face value, which I think is the issue here. There's a lot of people who believe, oh, the government, they could never do something wrong to us. They'll never hurt us. And historically, we know that's not the case.
No. Just to let you know, I have as a novelist, I have this. I have a background in literature, right? So I have actually not studied literature, but I've been into that for my whole life. So you can make an analysis of a text, right? And you can look for certain trademarks of the text, and you can then put it into a category. And propaganda is one category with its certain trademarks. And I was watching the news, and my kids were in the living room and watching the news as well. And I told them, because we I watched 1 minute of one of these. They were talking about the virus and all that, of course. Every day they do that. And I said, kids, I don't say kids, but what you're watching now is propaganda. It's the definition of propaganda, because I checked off all these things that you need to have in propaganda. It was all there. It's textbook propaganda. It's almost fascinating to watch,
Yeah, when you have the knowledge that it's propaganda, you can point out exactly what it is that they're doing and how they're spinning it, how they're framing it. And it amazes me that most people, well, not most, a good amount of people can't look past it. But there's also, it's interesting too. There's a level of like, I would say cognitive dissonance, where they know a lot of the new, like they know not to trust people know not to trust big pharma. People know that a certain amount of the news is fake. But when the time comes, and let's say big pharma says, all right, everybody line up, let's get the shot. People, if you ask them before, they would probably say they don't trust big pharma, but then they'll go and they'll line up when the time comes to get their experiment, or they'll still watch the news. They'll still, even if they know it's fake, they know, and I sort of wonder what the underlying like reason for that is. And it's, I wonder if it's just people don't trust themselves to make the distinction and then act on that, or if they don't know, like it's scary, it's fearful, they're afraid, they don't want to believe that there's malpractice by the government and the news agencies. And it's
I think there's a lot of fear, and people have become very good at being afraid. It's not a new thing. It's been going on for a long time. I'm just going to give an example, but it's a very good example. But, some people, they are afraid of Black people. They are. And I'm not saying that as an, anti-racist or anything like that, but it's just a fact.
Yeah.
And it's not really reasonable, or there isn't any logic in that, at least not in Norway,
right.
Because but that's one example. The environment is another example. Lots of kids are afraid that we're all going to die in a few years because of because dad is driving a petrol car.
Right.
And now this virus, it's not very deadly. That is a fact. It's not like, it's not polio. It's it's not tuberculosis. And that's why I get so upset when people, some people, not many, some people, they say, oh, you must be one of them anti-vaxxers.
Right.
No, I just believe in scientific method, sense and reason. But people have been trained into being afraid, and they get these easy solutions, just stand in line and get the shot, and that you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Which is a lie, by the way. But the difficult solution here, or that would be, well, probably, you should lose some weight, eat healthier, take a walk every day, at least 30 minutes, be a healthier person, eat, but that's much more difficult.
Right. Exactly. Because that requires a level of personal responsibility, that requires people to take action for their own life. And it's interesting. In the United States, the CDC released a study that said, I think it was 75-80% of people who were hospitalized with COVID were overweight. They were overweight. They didn't eat healthy. They said exercise can reduce your risk of being even sick. And so it's like, okay, we have all of these solutions which just point to a healthy lifestyle. Why do we need to all line up for this shot, this experiment? And it's, once you start asking those questions, it's so obvious how many holes there are in the narrative, how much logic has been thrown out the window. And the scientific method, it's almost disgraceful to science and to look at how science is portrayed, because now they say trust the science, believe the science. And it's kind of shameful to the scientific method. And I wonder why more scientists aren't speaking out against that. I know there are amounts of them, there are some, and you have silencing that goes on, but it's clear there haven't been any studies to support the facts, that's the narrative that is portrayed. And it's I think it comes back to, once you show people that, they get that understanding. Once you ask the right questions, you get that understanding. But we live in I think it shows to me that we've always lived in a society globally that is very prone to manipulation, prone to being taken advantage of, like this. Like, I feel like this has been in the making for a while because of just the way we've constructed our world and how we get our information and what we sort of teach kids when they're younger. We don't teach them how to ask questions. And I think that's all very much coming to a head right now. It's very much the results of that are clear. And it's
empires rise and fall, and that's how it is. I just know that I don't want to be, have my entire existence just wiped away because I trusted a government. I don't want that. So I think we all need to be, self-sufficient to some degree. I am now actually sitting in my second home. And I'm saying that not to brag, but I have storage of food in both houses. If in case something happens to one of the houses, things like that, you can do a lot with little. If you have a flat, you can make a bug out bag, you can store food, clean water, you can connect with people maybe who live other places, so that you can go there on short notice if you need to. And again, I'm not saying this because I think we'll get a zombie apocalypse. Sorry, the pronunciation there. That would be cool, but it's not like on TV, So,
Right. Right.
but it doing that, I think, is a good thing. Being prepared, you don't have to go all doomsday prepper. But I think the biggest advantage from doing that is the mental aspect of it. You get a sense of a self-confidence. That's the word I'm looking for here. That is quite amazing and healthy.
Yeah.
So everybody should do that.
I agree. I agree. I actually planted for the first time 2 days ago. Started my own garden, planted some food,
Awesome.
and I got some food backup, like emergency food supplies, emergency like water, and just sort of taking on that mentality that you just described. And it does feel empowering. Like it gives me a sense of like, if something were to happen, I feel prepared. I feel ready, just bought a firearm for the first time. America, guns. But it's just taking the necessary preparations, I think, and becoming self-reliant is key. And what's interesting is I feel like in note of that, I don't know if we're ever going to go back to quote unquote normal as it was before, right? But I feel like one of the options that we have as a society is to create a society that is more self-reliant, that is less dependent on these big governments, where food is grown in your local communities, where we decentralize sort of on all of these aspects of our lives, and we, really bring back small business and community trading and being self-sufficient, being able to provide for yourself and, if provide for your neighbors if need be, and creating sort of a communal, self-sufficient like systems all throughout the world. To me, that feels like the only solution to what we're seeing take place. It's that because when you have individuals become self-reliant, which is how we're going to sort of turn the agenda around, that's going to naturally sort of, I would say, show itself in society. That's going to naturally create a society that's built upon that. I mean, I think it shows a centralizing power in government. It doesn't work for the, historically, it's clearly not. There's certain levels of tyranny that almost always come into play if you don't, and it's certainly we need the governments for some things, as roads and different just ways of organization. But at the same time, I think we need to put the power back into the people's hands through self-reliance.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's like you say, we can't have everyone can't be trusted to do what they find most helpful to them, because then we would have people driving too fast and drunk and all that. And
Right.
So, but if we could move towards a more localized society where, as you said, just as you said there, it would be a lot better. What I'm seeing now as a threat to that is distrust among people. I have noticed that here in Norway. Norway has been, and they've studied this, remarkable in the way that there's a high degree of trust in Norway. It was right there on the top in the world. I don't know if it's number one, but it was right high up there on that scale. I think that has changed because of the whole COVID thing, because of distrust, people being scared that you're carrying a virus and all that. So that might be the biggest loss from all this here in my part of the world. If we lost that, And I think we have. Didn't take long. I think we might have lost that. And it's like we can rebuild with like-minded people. But I'm not so positive when it comes to that. So I believe in the family. If you have a family, then that's your group, that's your little clan, that's your you need to work together and yeah.
Yeah, no, I
that's
definitely
just
agree.
how it's going to be now.
Right, I definitely agree, and I feel like that trust piece that you mentioned, for a long time, the trust has been eroding in the United States. That I mean, ever since I feel like, and it wasn't always like that, but I feel like it was when, as soon as Donald Trump took office, for example, you saw a massive split in distrust between people who were Democrats and people who were Republicans. And ever since then, you sort of have more people sort of identify with their groups, and they'll start to mistrust anyone who's not in their group and in their label. And now you have the people who are quote unquote anti jab, I'll say that, and versus the people who have gotten it, and you see the mistrust between them growing. And it's so, at all levels, you have so many people who just aren't trusting their neighbor. And I think it's artificial. I think they were told to mistrust people. I don't think it was something that they consciously even chose to do. And, if you asked some of these people, oh, do you trust people? Do you like people? A lot of them would say yes, because they think they do. They don't even have the recognition that they're being divisive, or that. And it's funny because the quote unquote social justice people in the United States, for example, a lot of them are very divisive. They're not tolerant, not open. They create a lot of.
So I have discovered.
Yeah, and it's ironic because they're supposed to be the people fighting for social justice and for tolerance, and there's certain people that we should fight for, and stand up for people's rights. And but it's like, what are you guys doing? You're being so distolerant. You're hating people, literally. And it's unbelievable in that regard. But where I'm at right now is actually, though, a good example, I think, of how community can come together. The state that I moved to, I was from the East Coast. I lived in New Hampshire, and people were very, I would say, not so open, didn't really trust a lot of people. But where I'm at now, everybody's very open, loving, warm. It's very much a community feel. And so there are pockets of this throughout, I would say, the world. And I feel like it's going to be those communities that do the best in this time ahead. And, I don't know what the future is going to look like necessarily. And even if this agenda is implemented, let's say, for a large majority of the population, part of me wonders, it feels impossible to implement this on everybody, because there's so many people in the community that I'm in that would just say, no, we're not going to go along with this. Everybody just keep doing your thing. And everybody keep sort of living the way we're living. And I wonder if people will be able to sort of just, when it gets so crazy, if they'll be able to just detach and decide they're not going to take part, create their own life outside of the matrix of the Great Reset and society at large. And I don't know, do you think that's a realistic option? Do you think people will be able to detach, or is it,
some of us will have to?
Yeah.
And it's like I've made a decision that I will not be tested.
Yeah.
I will not have the jab. And I certainly won't go around and try to get COVID.
Yeah.
No, not doing that. So that means I can't travel.
Right.
And that's going to be implemented from just a few days now. The beginning of, I'm looking at the date here, 2 weeks from now, they're starting in Norway to implement this passport that's going to be streamlined and all of Europe. And I understand that I won't be able to travel to other countries from now on.
Right.
Now, I've traveled a lot, but there are still countries that I wanted to visit. I really wanted to go to your country, and I have a long list actually.
Yeah.
So I'm back to that old option, I'm going to say something here that I've done that is illegal. I have been to several countries without telling anyone because I have a boat. And I sail along the coast and I hop ashore and it's normal to do that, actually.
Right.
Now I understand if you do that in England now, they are threatening with 10 years in prison.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's clown world, it's insanity.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so now I feel bad for my kids because I really wanted them to be able to travel, see the world like I did. Of course, I hope that this will be over, but it's, when they first implement another degree of control and another method of collecting information and monetizing you as a person, it won't go away. That's what I think, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping it will.
Right. I agree. And I've come to sort of the inner peace of knowing I may not be able to travel again too. It's nice because in the United States, different states have already um, banned the passport actually. So, I'll be able to at least travel within the country a little bit to different states that are taking the same. I may not be able to fly. The airlines will probably put it in, but I can drive in theory, unless they ban gasoline cars, which you never know what they're going to do. But yeah, I feel the same way. It's about, I think, making peace with whatever happens, and that we can choose to be peaceful. We can choose to sort of live our life regardless of what they decide to do. And, I feel the same way. There's a lot of countries I would like to go to. I haven't been to that many countries. I mean, I've been to a few other ones. I've been to, I think, only place in Europe I've been to is France. But I've been to, Middle America, Costa Rica, down there. So, but I would love to explore the world. And, when I have children, I'd love for them to explore the world. And it's like, I can't imagine. I feel like in our lifetime, it can't go forever. I think there's going to be too much pushback. There's going to be enough resistance because, more and more people I'm noticing are asking the right questions, are waking up, are sort of um, putting up resistance. So I'd like to think that just by the sheer numbers, by demand, that type of measure wouldn't go in. I would hope so. I would, I'd really like to hope so. And, it's, I guess only time will tell. We can't snap our fingers and then end it. You know what I mean? There isn't a magical solution like that, unfortunately. So it's, I don't know, but I personally feel optimistic about the future. I don't know. Do you feel, how do you feel moving forward? Like, what is sort of your mindset? Like, what is, how do you feel about the future looking ahead? Do you feel more optimistic, pessimistic? Where are you sort of standing on that?
Well, a lot of my day is spent in a state of spite.
Yeah. Same.
No, no, it's I'm I don't know. First of all, just let me say something about the future, my hopes for the future. I hope the USA will manage to produce a president who will say, enough of this. We are opening up the world again. That's my hope.
Yeah.
Someone with Trump's charisma, and lots of people don't like Trump. I'm not a big fan myself, but he had charisma, or has.
Yeah.
But without without obnoxious
Yeah.
things there. That would be nice. Someone who will, because I can sit here in Norway and have my opinions and live my life, but this, I will be probably long gone dead before society as a whole starts to shift back to a more natural state. I think this will could go on for a long time. We need fast, rapid changes to correct what has happened. That's what I'm hoping. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not the president that you have now.
I agree.
He's not that guy.
I tend to think he's not even running the show. There's a lot of people behind him making decisions, and he's sort of the puppet leader. There is one guy in the governor of Florida. I don't know if you're familiar with Ron DeSantis. He's got that charisma. He's very the media hates him. That's how you know he's probably pretty good. But that's if he runs in 2024, he'll definitely have my vote. That'll be just because he is the embodiment of what you just described. So very vocal against the passport, vocal against all the division. He wants to sort of, just open everything back up. And it's, that's what I hope we move towards. I think you're right. It's going to take a while to come into alignment with sort of the natural world, with back in, integrating nature into society, integrating doing things like growing our own food and becoming self-reliant, and really, that's going to take a lot of time, and to undo the damage that's been done from this pandemic in terms of the authoritarianism, the tyranny. Government doesn't like to let go of power once they have it. So I don't know. It's a slippery slope. We'll definitely see what happens. But so Bjorn, we're at about an hour. I mean, we've hit on a lot of good subjects. This is very, I feel like I've learned a lot from talking to you. I love everything that you're doing and the message that you bring, self-reliance, and what would you? I would say, where do you want to, send the listeners to go and find your work, find what you're doing, and what also do you have any sort of final thoughts and based on what we've talked about, and just sort of wrapping up the conversation?
Yeah, well, I ended with a pessimistic tone there, I guess. I am optimistic because you have to be,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have to have some hope. Now, if the listeners and viewers want to find me, they can do so going to my website. That's bull-hansen.com, bull-hansen.com, or my just do a YouTube search of my name and you will find me on YouTube. That's where I am.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll put that in the episode show notes in the description, so it's all right there. They can just scroll down and click it. And I definitely would encourage everybody to go check out your channel, go to your website, just because the work you're doing is really powerful and it resonates for me. And I've shown it to a few people, and they're like, "Oh, I really like this guy. Like he's doing good work." So I got my family watching you on YouTube now too. So it's awesome. We definitely love your message, and I look forward to continue seeing it and seeing your work and how it evolves and the difference that it's going to make, because it does make a big difference. It definitely does. So
well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And down the line, when we get further down the slope of tyranny, we'll have to do it again when we're closing in on the end game or something. But
absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. This was a lot of fun. Sweet. All right. Everybody, thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys all next time.